So when I made my first analysis videos on both Liam Delap and Patrik Schick, I assumed that Delap's release clause, even if Ipswich were relegated, would sit at £40 million as previously reported, and due to Schick's goal scoring form, I thought Leverkusen would be demanding at least £35 million. However, since then, encouraging £1, but according to Fabrizio Romano, because Ipswich are going to get relegated, that is now lowered to £30 million, with reports from Germany linking Schick with United, suggesting that Leverkusen would be willing to accept a fee in the region of 25 to 30 million euros, 21.5 to 25.5 million pounds, which would mean that both Schick and Delap combined would cost as little as 52 to 55 million pounds, which is less than Osimhen's release clause of 58 million pounds at Napoli. But it's not just the transfer fee, also factor in that Osimhen is reportedly demanding 11 million euros, 9.5 million pounds a season, after tax, which means that United would pay Osimhen what Casemiro is currently on, £18 million a season before tax, £350,000 per week, and the double signing of Delap and Schick as an alternative starts to seem a lot more appealing. Schick is only on £6.3 million a season, and Delap is reportedly demanding £150,000 a week, which would be around £7.5 million a season. Which would mean that combined, Schick and Delap would not only cost less than Osimhen in terms of the transfer fee, but also in terms of the salary package, as well as probably the signing on and the agent fee as well. But before I carry on with the analysis, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfever.co. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, with Manchester United shirts going all the way back to the early 90s. They've got the Italian, French, Spanish and the German retro shirts as well as international shirts alongside that. And if you use code Atlantis at checkout, you will get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below. If Osimhen is demanding £18 million a season, that's just simply too much. I would say a maximum of £12 million a season, and so I'm going to rule him out for the moment unless something changes in terms of his demands. And so in deciding who could be an alternative, I came to the conclusion that unless it's Gyökeres, which also seems unlikely at this point, United would probably be better off just bringing in Delap and Schick as a two for around 52 to 55 million pounds. Now the obvious argument against signing Patrik Schick would be his age, but he only turned 29 in January, and if you actually think about when most world-class strikers actually hit their peak, most of the time it's in their late 20s, if not their early 30s, and I think Patrik Schick could be the same, and this is why. First of all, Schick's game is fairly limited for a centre forward, but I actually think this could work to his benefit, as rather than being a Harry Kane type of forward who utilises his technical ability and playmaking to drop off and play a kind of trequartista, false nine type of role, Schick is a typical poacher. But not just this, Schick isn't someone who's reliant on his pace and someone who's going to decline when that eventually goes, as instead he's reminiscent of a traditional poacher like Filippo Inzaghi, and I'm going to analyse Inzaghi and why he was such an effective goal scorer later on in this video. But Schick's composure and technique when receiving shooting opportunities inside of the box has been elite this season, but also in previous seasons when he's played a full campaign as well, which you'll see statistically in just a minute. But in terms of the eye test, you can see that despite having a tall and languid stature, standing at 6'3", Schick is very good technically, and not in the same way as Joshua Zirkzee, as he's not the type of forward who's going to drop off and link play seamlessly with 1 and 2 touch layoffs with his back to goal or spin pressers on his back. But certainly when the ball goes into his feet in more advanced and congested positions in the forward line, Schick has the ball control and awareness to be able to link play, subtle flicks and sharp layoffs, making him the perfect poacher who can sit between the two centre-backs, pinning them backwards, working to keep the centre-backs occupied and stretch the space between the opposition's defensive and midfield lines. But of course, his goal scoring is the main aspect of his game, and Schick has a variety of different finishes in his locker, having excellent movement and offensive instincts inside of the box, whether this is peeling off a centre-back, win these headers, and having the ability to redirect these crosses into the net, getting across players to latch on to crosses, as well as just being there for the rebound inside the 6-yard box. Now I will admit that from the eye test, Schick doesn't look as impressive as someone like Liam Delap in terms of his finishes, but like Inzaghi in the 90s and 2000s, his anticipation off the ball movement and defensive instincts are what gets him goals, and we can see this statistically. He ranks in the top 5% of all forwards in Europe's top 5 leagues and European competitions for his non-penalty XG, and the top 1% for his non-penalty goals, overperforming his non-penalty XG by an impressive, if not unsustainable, 0.25 per 90. Last season in the Bundesliga, despite not being a regular starter for Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen, largely due to Alonso often going strikerless in a back 5 system, Schick's minutes mainly came through substitute appearances, though Schick's per 90 metrics still look very impressive, with him ranking in the 80th percentile for his non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG, which he overperformed by 0.06 per 90. And so if you look at his stats as a whole, this has resulted in him scoring 17 goals in 26 Bundesliga games, as well as 1 goal in the 400 minutes he's played in the Champions League. And despite not being a regular fixture in the starting 11, last season he still scored 7 goals in 20 mostly substitute appearances, playing just over 1,000 minutes, as well as 5 goals in 9 Europa League games. In 22-23, Schick did have an injury-hit campaign, which resulted in just 4 goals in 23 games, and just over 1,500 minutes played. But the season before, in 21-22, Schick was scoring at a rate that was even more impressive than this season, scoring 24 goals in 27 Bundesliga games at a rate of 1 goal per 90 minutes, and sitting in the top 1 and 3% respectively for his non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG in the Bundesliga. And so goal scoring wise, Schick has been consistently looking impressive, if not outright elite in terms of his per 90 metrics when he has been playing. He did have an injury hit 22-23 season and struggled to break into Alonso's invincible team in the 23-24 season, but this season and back in 21-22, Patrik Schick has been consistently over the last 4 seasons, but if he was, he wouldn't be worth 20 to 25 million pounds, likely wouldn't be playing for Leverkusen and would definitely be regarded as one of the best goal scoring strikers in world football. And so that's why, for the money that Leverkusen are reportedly demanding, I think it's worth taking the risk on Schick alongside Delap. And I'm going to do a separate video analysing how Amorim could potentially use Delap and Schick as a front 2 in a 3-5-2 system. So subscribe to the channel for that, but in the rest of the video, I'm going to be analysing one of the, if not the most iconic poachers in football history, and then briefly look at Schick's role in Amorim's system. Filippo Inzaghi wasn't the fastest, strongest or the most technically gifted striker, yet with 316 career goals he stands as one of football's deadliest poachers. And I think you can boil his success down to 3 main traits: anticipation, movement and cold-blooded finishing. Inzaghi's greatest weapon was his ability to read the game as though he had a sixth sense, being milliseconds quicker than defenders, which allowed him to get to balls that they couldn't. He didn't rely on pace but on his timing, predicting Inzaghi was born offside, with his knack for being in the right place being almost unstoppable. See, Inzaghi was a typical poacher, and a poacher's job isn't necessarily to dribble or even create, it's to disappear and reappear at decisive moments, and Inzaghi mastered this. He lurked on the shoulder of the last defender, exploiting gaps with diagonal runs. His movement was chaotic yet calculated, making him a nightmare to defend against even for the most experienced centre-backs. Inzaghi thrived on minimal service. His first touch was often a finish, no unnecessary dribbles, just instant shots. He scored tap-ins, deflections and scrappy goals because he understood that a goal counts the same whether it's a 30-yard screamer or from a yard out. As a penalty box striker, Inzaghi's role was simple: stay central, he rarely drifted wide, staying where the goals would happen, and he would also play on the last line. His high positioning would force defenders deeper, which worked not to just put himself in the right positions, but also create space for teammates in front of him. And crucially, he was able to create half chances out of nothing, able to turn rebounds, loose balls and defensive errors into goals. And so Inzaghi's genius lay in doing the simple things relentlessly well, to a very consistent level. He wasn't a complete forward, but as a poacher, he had all the attributes you'd want. His career proves that goals aren't just about skill, they're about game and position yourself where it matters. And so tactically in Amorim's system, the role that we would see Patrik Schick play would be very similar to Inzaghi's poacher role, certainly in the final third. A lot of the time he will be playing a similar role to the one we see Højlund play, mainly sitting high and pinning the centre-backs as far back as possible, looking to aid United's build-up by positionally pinning the centre-backs backwards in order to maximise the space between the opposition's midfield and defensive lines, rather than dropping off from the forward line like Xerxes and looking to link play in deeper areas with his back to goal. Schick will hold a higher position on the shoulder of the last defender, looking to break in behind and get into goal scoring positions. But he is also capable of receiving the ball to feet and using his ball control to link play efficiently as well. But Schick's role would be very simple: sit high and central between the two centre-backs and be a target in the box, basically being United's out and out goal scorer. And with Garnacho or Delap to his left, Bruno Fernandes to his right, and wing backs like Amad Dorgu, or even a crossing specialist like McNeil, which I've suggested in previous videos, and I think Schick has the perfect setup around him. Movement down the channels from Garnacho and the wing backs, the quality from crossing positions, and receiving through balls in behind the back line, which I think could allow Schick to replicate a similar sort of goal scoring output to what we've seen this season from him at Leverkusen. And for £20 to £25 million, even though he is 29, where are you going to find better value for money than that? Particularly because poacher type strikers can usually sustain their careers at the highest level for a lot longer than other types of forwards, and so United could get 3, 4, even 5 good years from Schick, which I think would be well worth the money. So let me know what you think of Patrik Schick in the comment section below, and if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. And if you want to sign up for my in-game Instagram group chat or read some of my articles, I'll leave my Patreon linked on the end screen now as well.